be sure, I think all the audio connections should have been placed on mute unless you're a presenter. So be sure and use the chat feature that's in the WebEx to communicate, and be sure to chat to all participants in order to send a message. So then just you'll see that we've got our, whoops, you're flipping through fairly quickly here. You want to?
Sorry, I'm backtracking. I think our slides are just a little mixed up here. Go for it.
Yeah. So I'm not sure if you've had these up there. We want to be sure that you're aware that we have our vision, mission, and values for the Practice Facilitator Network, so that every PF is supported to facilitate implementation of the patient's medical home, and our mission to build a culture of continuous quality improvement. And then our values are that it's evidence-based, collaborative, that there's connections, safe patient care, and joy in work. So next, So I don't have control of these, do I, Leanne?
No, you can just say next slide if you want. Yeah.
Okay. So so just if you can type in your name and the organization if you represent a number of you, and send it to all participants, and then just include the number in the room if there's more than just yourself. So it looks like we've got a fair number of people in here. Good. Okay, so
we have Angie Johnson on the line who's going to present this slide.
Okay, perfect.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for inviting me, just to make sure everybody's got good, clear messaging about the PCN Forum that's coming up in early 2020. Most of you will be familiar with this event that happens. It used to occur twice per year, and we've recently changed it to make it once per year. And so the next conference is coming February 7th and 8th, 2020. And what's a little different about this particular forum is that the leads exec, so the 5 physician leads exec in the province, as well as the planning committee, have agreed that we should have a special invite extended to practice facilitators and physician champions doing PMH implementation in the province. And so some of you, hopefully all of you, will have received the invitation, the link to register. And we just wanted to make sure that we use this communication channel to remind you to get and to make sure you are armed with the right information. Your executive directors of your PCNs will have received this as well, and they should have been made aware that we have specially invited the practice facilitators in our province to join. And so, and we know that we're still getting questions about that. We've permitted a special conference registration rate, so a discount for our practice facilitators to join us, as well as our physician champions to join us at the forum. And we're really pleased to have programming or, sessions that will speak specifically to practice facilitators in the province. And as well, it'll allow you to hear what's going on in the bigger picture in terms of the direction of the province. It's always a really lively forum. It's a lively discussion. You'll hear physicians talking with government. You'll hear the vision for the future. You'll hear what zones are up to. And you're also going to hear what some PCNs are doing to further their journey in terms of PMH, and specifically how they're scaling that. So that's really the theme, is scaling the patient's medical home. It's in Calgary. We welcome you. And if you have any questions, feel free to text that into the chat box there. Otherwise, this is really just a friendly public service announcement to make sure you have the information, to make sure you know that we're really hoping lots of practice facilitators can join us. We know that some PCNs will have questions. Some PCNs will have to receive permission to have the practice facilitators come. And so whatever hoops you need to jump through and ask for, please do your best to join us, because what we really have tried to do is blend in our change agent audience into this particular forum. and that's you guys. So we look forward to seeing you there.
Thank you for that. Okay, the next slide. So this is the IHI National Forum on Quality Improvement, and so this is going to be available if you can join them at the AMA office, either in Calgary or Edmonton. And also the AMA office is covering the cost if you have a group that would like to get together just locally for yourselves. You can make arrangements to get that information. So Leanne, can you just confirm what they would need to do for that?
Sure. Actually, an invitation went out late last week inviting you to register if you'd like to attend in person or whether you would like to attend virtually. If you would like to attend virtually, we will email you back with how to do that, with the instructions, and we welcome anyone who wishes to attend in person. We just ask that you register via the email that went out so that we can ensure that we have the appropriate space and rooms. And we'll be sending out another reminder for registration. And so if anyone hasn't received that and you're interested in attending, please put it in the chat box and I'll make sure you receive that invitation.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so then our next slide. So this is talking about the IHI framework for improving joy in work, and Angile is going to talk to us about that. Angile is part of our co-design team, and she works with AMA ACT team.
Hi, everyone. I just wanted to note for everybody that, we polled our audience on these webinars in the past about what they value most. And joy in work actually came at the bottom of the list. So we sort of thought we might want to just touch base with everybody to just talk about the importance of joy in work. And hopefully after today you'll see some value in it and maybe be able to apply some new skills to increase joy in everyday work for yourselves and with the people you work with. So just to start off with, we thought we would send you, or we would have a little poll everywhere question. What brings you joy in work? And so there's two ways of participating in that. You can either go to pollev.com/pfn331. This is all on your screen, so you don't have to listen to me if you don't want to. Or you can text 37607, and the text is PFN331, and then it'll send you a message saying that you have joined, and then you can text your message. So a few answers coming in, but let us know in the chat if you're having any issues getting to the poll everywhere question. So some good ones here about relationships and colleagues and coworkers. My awesome team, I like that one. I also like the ability to have positive impact in patient care. Feeling like I'm making a difference. No 2 days are the same. Making a difference for physicians and patients. I like that I'm seeing lots of relationships and colleagues. That's great. Engaged team members, that's a really good one too. Creativity, connecting with stakeholders, making a difference. Awesome. Well, those are some great answers. Oh, independence. That's a nice one. Let's give you a couple more seconds to add in a few here. Feeling of accomplishment with the finished project. Does that ever happen? No, I'm just kidding. Running with new and exciting ideas and seeing teams having success. Learning opportunities. Better care for patients. That's great. Can we go to the next slide, Leanne? So one of the reasons why we focus on joy in work is, burnout is quite prevalent in healthcare, along with other industries, of course, but there are lots of demands on our time and resources and energy, and quite often that's combined with some poorly designed systems. So, we need to take care of our people and take care of ourselves. And really, joy and work is more than just the absence of burnout. It's a system property, and it can affect things from patient experience, quality of care, patient safety, organizational performance, and also system costs. So it is actually important to look at joy and work, to look at these things that can be managed kind of in the background even. Can I have the next slide? So I think most people who have worked in quality for a while probably are familiar with the name of William Edwards Deming, and he's sort of widely acknowledged as the leading management thinker in the field of quality, or at least he was one of the first. He was a statistician and a business consultant whose methods helped Japan recover after the Second World War, and I believe he's the first person to publish about the PDSA cycle, the Plan, Do, Study, Act. So he says that people are entitled to joy and work. So Deming's been around for a long time. So, obviously people have been thinking about this for many years, several decades. Next slide. So the IHI worked with its partners back in 2015 to develop this joy and work framework that you see on the screen. So this is just the first part of the framework. This is basically like the how. How do we do it? Step one, asking staff, what matters to you? Just like the way we ask patients that. Step two, we then need to identify those unique impediments, or what are the pebbles in the shoe. What's getting in the way of better days and good days? So, we often have challenges, but there's often solutions that may be unique to your situation, or maybe something you can learn from elsewhere. Step three, commit to a systems approach. Committing to joy and work as a shared responsibility at all levels can actually increase joy and work overall in an organization. Step four, use improvement science to test approaches to improving joy in your organization. People who have issues around burnout, et cetera, need to help create that solution and test it, just like with other PDSAs. And the outcome, hopefully, if all of these things are put in place, are better patient experience, better organizational performance, and crucially, lower staff burnout. Next slide. So this is the IHI, the second part of the framework, from IHI, and this is the what. So it shows the critical components of a system that are required really for ensuring a joyful and engaged workforce. So I'm not going to go through all of this in detail, but it's just interesting to see that there's interlocking responsibilities at all levels in an organization. And one of the things that you guys said in your poll everywhere answers was a lot around camaraderie and teamwork, if I can paraphrase. So I think and meaning and purpose. So I think that we all kind of can relate to this joy and work framework. So if you have any, next slide, please. Sorry. If you wanted to look at more resources and really the white paper itself, the IHI resources page does have the white paper on the framework for improving joy and work. That's what it looks like there on the screen. And for those people who haven't already, the AMA has account details for you to use if you'd like to open up an IHI account and do any of the IHI courses, or downloading things like this, etc. It's really valuable. It was crucial for me in my journey to becoming a better facilitator. So, next slide. Okay, that's me finished. Any questions for me? Just throw them up there in the chat if you have any.
Okay, I'll watch for questions that might come up, and then we'll move on. So our next speaker is David Campkin, and he is a mental health counselor at the Red Deer Primary Care Network. He's been a social worker for 38 years, working across many different fields. For the past 8 years, he has worked with PCNs, and he's been at the Red Deer PCN for the past 3 years. He provides brief counseling, and as a group facilitator for our Journeying Through Grief program, he's going to be talking about mindfulness and how that can fit with joy in work. So David, take it away.
Thanks, Carol. Okay. So good afternoon, everybody. As Carol mentioned, I've been working as a social worker for close to 40 years. Oh my gosh, it seems like such a long time. Last 10 of which, approximately 10, have been in mental health. So when I was asked to do this little presentation, I thought, well, I'm going to not just grab a bunch of research that I can find. I'm going to talk about some of this material based on my own experience, because I have quite a bit. So I thought that as a frame of a professional reference, that coming from experience would be good to incorporate some of that. So some of this, what I'm about to talk about, it comes directly from my own practice in terms of working with mental health patients. So when I looked at the topic, joy in work and mindfulness, I thought, wow, those are quite different. But then as I started to put some stuff together, I realized that this is quite a good marriage, that it really fits quite nicely, and I just kept going and going. So I know I don't have very long here, so I'm not sure if I have too little or too much material, but I'll just start in, and you can cut me off if I get too long-winded. So in my practice as a mental health counselor, I see a lot of people individually for mental health disorders, and it's obvious to me that I think, and this applies to most mental health people, that one of the biggest problems that we deal with is anxiety disorders. And anxiety disorders are directly related to work and dissatisfaction in the workplace. Is probably accounts for about 25 to 35% of the anxiety cases that I see. So the stress from people experiencing stress at work for a number of different reasons, and as was already pointed out, leading to burnout and illness that leads people to have to consider whether they could even concentrate or focus on their jobs. So that's not much joy when they come in and have to see somebody for that problem. So I think, when we ask the question, what do we mean by the term joy in work? I don't think it's just being happy going to work or being at work, but rather I would refer to it as a feeling of success and fulfillment that results from meaningful work. And that meaningful work is a belief that one's contribution is important to the overall operation that they're working in. So I think that's a little deeper than just saying happiness. I think when you look at, this was already mentioned in the earlier presentation, but I think when you have to take a look at, in the workplace, you have to take a look at the responsibility that both the employer and the employee takes to see that there is joy in the workplace and that there is happiness and that there's a good balance there. I think that there must be an assurance that the work environment is both physically and psychologically safe. And I'm talking about reviews of workplace hazards and safety and that kind of thing, but also psychologically safe in terms of ensuring that there's no incidents of bullying and harassment and racism and just general disrespect. I think that's very important in the workplace to ensure that those kinds of things aren't happening. The purpose and meaning of the work must be appreciated. So a belief in the organization's mission and vision. That's important for an individual to really, take a look at that and say, what am I doing here, and am I really sort of believing the mandate of the organization that I'm in, the value system of the organization. Third one is really important. This is, it needs to be a camaraderie amongst employees, so the teamwork aspect, and that came up a lot when I saw the words coming up for people that were describing joy, that there needs to be a sense of teamwork, camaraderie among employees. One of the worst things that can happen in a workplace is when people work as a lone ranger, and I've had that experience myself in past agencies where there has been no teamwork and no camaraderie, and that just makes you feel very lonely and very sad and without joy for sure. So a teamwork approach, in order for that to occur, there must be an environment that fosters the value of mutual trust and open transparency and communication. That's very important in a joyful workplace. This promotes high staff morale and employee feeling of being valued and appreciated. And that's one of the things that I get a lot of with people that come to see me, is that they don't feel valued or appreciated in their workplace. So the ways to do that, in a good organization that understands the need for high morale is having lots of social events, professional development days, staff retreats, and just different team building days. Those are all important things for an organization to do to help contribute towards building that sense of feeling of belonging and appreciation. There needs to be some choice and flexibility over the way time is spent at work. So opportunity for creativity, leadership, and development. A good organization will realize that that's very important to getting an employee engaged and making them feel like they are important and appreciated. Work life is considered to be fair, equitable, and at times social and fun. That's really important. If you don't have some fun at work, then there's not going to be much joy, that's for sure. So trying to have fun and enjoy the opportunities to have a few laughs, and laughter in a workplace is good. I know that at the Red Deer PCN, one of the things that stood out for me is the amount of laughter that goes on here, and just the general good feelings that people have on a day-to-day basis, and that just makes it much more fun to go to work. So I made a quote here: "A happy employee conducts a healthy and functional work-life balance." That's important because I get a lot of people that come in to me and say that, well, for example, I can think of one client who worked for 3 jobs at 80 hours per week to avoid a dysfunctional home life. So that became sort of a form of workaholism, and I see that occasionally coming in. People that just immerse themselves in work. Well, if you overwork, then you're obviously taking a big step towards burnout, and that's not a good thing. Even though work takes up probably the second most amount of time in our lives, next to sleep, we still have to have a healthy work-life balance. And what that means is that taking work home physically and cognitively are not conducive to good, healthy work-life balance. So work should not be the top priority in a person's life, but rather one's health and family should take that priority. Some common workplace complaints include, that I've heard, is work is boring and repetitive, there's no opportunity for advancement, employee bullying and harassment by management or coworkers, employees do not feel valued or appreciated. And I've already talked a little bit about that, but those are the list of probably the highest complaints that people have when they come in for help to deal with stress and anxiety. So what happens when people get into that hot water where they're not happy and then they experience some of these things, these complaints when they come in to see somebody? Well, that can lead to what's known as employee burnout, and that's already been mentioned. But burnout, or what is known in helping professions and first responders as compassion fatigue, is basically defined as mental exhaustion, lack of emotional strength, and can be easily include poor physical health and a variety of mental health problems such as acute stress, anxiety, depression, and even trauma. So that's a little bit that I have to say on my joy in the workplace. Now I'm going to switch over to talk a little bit about mindfulness. Am I still good for time?
About 5.
Yeah. How much?
Yeah, about 5 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'll try and whip through this quickly. So mindfulness is a strategy, a therapeutic strategy for employers to cope with the stress of having difficulty finding joy in any employment. So mindfulness is divided into, well, there's 2 or 3 different types of mindfulness that I like to allude to. One is mindfulness. Oftentimes you'll hear mindfulness meditation. So mindfulness meditation is, in fact, one of the same in a lot of regards. That mindfulness includes different forms of meditation, focus on mental and spiritual relaxation and physical relaxation. Different strategies that are taught and learned that can help people deal with stressful situations, with anxiety. So there's 2 types of the mindfulness that I kind of allude to. One is mindfulness-based stress reduction, which was formulated by a guy named John Kabat-Zinn, who's kind of developed this model. And the other one is mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, which is based on a lot of CBT principles. That is the interrelationship between thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. And that was pioneered by Siegel, Teasdale, and Williams. Those are the 2 that I usually refer to when I'm talking about mindfulness. Mindfulness strategies, there's short-term mindfulness and there's long-term mindfulness. So short-term mindfulness is for stress and anxiety reduction. And it consists of different strategies, and I'll just list a few quickly here. breathing exercises, body scan, 3-minute breathing space, progressive muscle relaxation, guided imagery, finding your safe place, discovering love and kindness. These are different strategies that we teach people to use in anxiety and stressful situations. So if somebody is experiencing stress at work, then they can slip into practicing some of these strategies, which will help them to keep clear-headed and in the moment. Mindfulness is very much being in the moment and not spending a lot of time in the future and the past. The second type is the longer-term meditation strategies include yoga, Zen, Tai Chi, and various other forms of meditation. So these things are really helpful for people to have a repertoire of, so that if they get into a stressful situation at work, they can resort to those, stay clear-headed, develop an action plan, and start to work on trying to resolve the problem. Where am I going here? Okay. In a strategy that focuses upon experiencing the world that is the moment, here and now. In other words, to begin to become aware of what the situation is doing to one's body and mind. So that's essentially what mindfulness is. It is a practice of blocking out past and future considerations. How is mindfulness, and why and how is mindfulness important to or useful for an unhappy employee? Mindfulness is paramount in assisting one to remain calm, clear-thinking, optimistic, and better able to plan relevant strategies for a resolution. Mindfulness facilitates creativity. Mindfulness leads to stress reduction, leads to an increased ability for absorption of new information, adaptability, ability to adapt quicker and more effectively, problem-solving ability increases, vitality, more energy level increase, and increased empathy for others. So mindfulness becomes very important in terms of trying to help to reduce stress and anxiety in the workplace and open the door to find more joy. Am I doing? Are we getting close?
About 5 minutes.
5 minutes? Okay. So I'm just going to sort of end up here with a few points and statements. Being happier at work is tied to better health or well-being, more creative and effective problem solving, more productivity and innovation, and faster career advancement. People who are happier at work are more authentic, more committed and driven to work, and more willing to contribute beyond their job descriptions. They also find more flow and meaning in their work. In face of adversity and setbacks, people in happier workplaces tend to see the big picture, making them less stressed, better at coping with and recovering from work strain, and also better reconciling conflict. Socially, people who are happier at work are rated by others as more likable, more trustworthy, more deserving of respect and attention, and more effective leaders. At happier workplaces, people are also more helpful to each other and more supportive of one another during difficult times. Happier workplaces report less turnover, lower health care costs, fewer mistakes and accidents, and more efficiency and greater shareholder value, and quicker rebounds in the wake of adverse events or failures. So just those few points to sort of end up, and I'm going to leave it at that because otherwise I'm going to be running overtime. So thank you for listening.
Okay, thank you, David. There's a few comments here. So what can one do when you don't feel psychologically safe in your workplace? That's one of the questions.
Well, again, this is where, first of all, keeping calm and clear-headed and keep the stress level down so you can think through an action plan, as I mentioned. What's some of the strategies that I can develop to go and try and deal with that problem? Whether it's communicating with certain individuals in certain places, it could be including an HR department or some of them top managers, or in certain cases where there's a union, maybe bringing in a union representative, trying to figure out what to do to try and discuss the problem and putting it forth, see if there's a resolution. So I think that's the key, is to stay calm and come up with an action plan and make a move in the right direction to try and see if it can be resolved. Now, I'm not unrealistic in the sense that I've had some situations come forward to me that couldn't be resolved through a number of different strategies to plan an action. And the person came to the conclusion that the only option would be that they would have to find an alternative employment. I mean, that is an option, but it certainly should be the last option. And hopefully that they can develop a plan that will get them some resolution by communication, transparency, and understanding.
Right. So then most of the other comments that are here, David, are around some of the things that they've done. So some of them have talked about a social committee that they've developed with their workplace that seems to make a big difference as far as some of those relationships and that socialization.
Mm-hmm.
I think the one last comment just talks about those being a bit different than what you had talked about at the very beginning of the presentation around retreats and education. Would you say that that's true to what you were talking about?
That's pretty much it. I'd say that's pretty true to what I was trying to get across.
Yeah.
That's very important.
Yeah. Okay. So if there's any other questions, you can continue to post them, and we'll move on to our next slide with our next presenter, I believe, should be up. Yes. So resilience in the quality improvement workplace is with Medjin, who is also another member of the co-design team. Medjin is a practice facilitator at Edmonton Southside PCN. Outside of her work, she is a spoken word poet and local artist. She's performed her poetry in various places and events in Edmonton, like City Hall, the Citadel Theatre, Edmonton Poetry Festival, Global TV Women of Vision Awards. So Medjin, share with us your resilience in quality improvement.
Thanks, Carol. Can everybody hear me? Yep. Okay,
yep.
Just wanted to check. All right. I just wanted to start off by just looking at the definition of resilience. And so resilience, I listed about two definitions here. Resilience is the ability to recover from or adjust easily to misfortune or change. It is also defined as the capability of a strained body to recover its size and shape after deformation caused especially by compressive stress. And what I find interesting about both definitions is that they have one thing in common, and it's the ability to recover, or you would say that the capacity to recover. If you could go on the next slide. I just wanted to also list out what the American Psychological Association defines as resilience, and it's the process of adapting well in the face of adversity, trauma, tragedy, threats, or significant sources of stress such as family, relationship problems, serious health problems, or workplace and financial stressors. And in other words, it means bouncing back from difficult experiences. And when looking at what does it mean to be resilient, I think it's a skill that goes beyond our work as practice facilitators, because when we're looking at adversity or trauma or whatever stressors, we have to always remember that we are holistic beings, and oftentimes, like, our work is only part of what of where our resiliency can come from. And so oftentimes we forget that it could also be a reminder to our own self in our own capacity to overcome these various stressors that come when it comes to being a practice facilitator. And so if you go on the next slide. So I just listed two questions here. Because when we're looking at our work as practice facilitators, what does adversity look like? How do you adapt? And so, if you guys could just chime in the chat on certain examples that you can think of what adversity can look like as a practice facilitator. Okay. Yeah. Challenging personalities. Lack of engagement. Yeah. Being turned away from meetings. Apathy. Yep, that's a good one. feel free to chime in. I'm just going to continue. Just talking about resilience, because resilience is not a trait that people either have or do not have. It involves behaviors, thoughts, and actions that can be learned and developed in anyone. So I think oftentimes when we're looking at examples like pushback or turnover of office staff, and having to introduce yourself with the same doc for the 15th time, which is very much common in our work as practice facilitators. If you could go on the next slide, please, Karen. And I think it has a couple of animations, so just keep going. So I just listed a couple examples of what it could look like as practice facilitators. So facilitating a workshop and forgetting your words or content. How many of you guys have experienced that? I know I have. Presenting with a non-engaged crowd, which I believe Sandy mentioned. Confronting an angry or upset physician in a meeting or presentation. A QI meeting where the agenda gets derailed and no progress has been made. Or overall, just being overwhelmed with the number of things that needs to get done, and putting a lot of effort in facilitating change in the clinic and not seeing any results. And believe me, I know I've experienced every single one of those in my short year of being a practice facilitator, and even as a poetry performer, I tend to memorize my poems, and there's been several times where I would forget my lines in a crowd of people that would include the mayor and everybody else, and just feelings of shame would obviously come in my mind, but also you just get that paralysis. And I don't know about you guys, but I know for me, I also get very critical about myself. And oftentimes in all of this, there's this increase in anxiety. And oftentimes when we think about resilience, it's not often that we also associate resilience with our own feelings of shame, or just not measuring up to what we think we should be, or a standard that we've set for ourselves. Because I know that we're all ambitious people wanting to get our work done and to do our work very well. And so, if you could go on the next slide, I just wanted to just introduce this concept called shame resilience theory. And this theory was developed by Brené Brown. I don't know if some of you might have heard of her. She's a social work research professor who spent years and years studying shame. And she's written several books like Gifts of Imperfection, Daring Greatly, Rising Strong. Her latest book is called Dare to Lead, and the subtitle being Brave Work, Tough Conversations, Whole Hearts. I highly recommend her. She's excellent in just really unpacking what shame does to us, and also it enabled me to have a better understanding of how I can reframe those moments so that way I can move forward. And so if you could go, or actually, I'm just going to read shame resilience. Sorry, go back in the last slide. So shame resilience is grounded on a theory based on building resilience to shame by connecting with authentic selves and growing meaningful relationships with others. So it involves moving towards empathy, and when we are experiencing shame, and away from shame, like fear, blame, and disconnection. Go to the next slide. So the four elements of shame resilience that she describes is, number one, recognizing shame and understanding our triggers. Like what is our body doing when we are experiencing those triggers? And so is our heart racing? And number two, practicing critical awareness. And so knowing why something exists, how it works. But I think not only that, when it comes to our own understanding of what is happening in those moments where we are feeling discouraged or stressed because something is not going the way that we anticipated it to be, the way for us to develop that resilience is also to have the ability to think about these situations in a more critical sense. And we'll go over that, I think, in the next slide. But number 3 is reaching out and telling our story. So who is around us that can help us unpack these moments? And it was mentioned earlier, either by Angel or David, but having that safe place that could enable us to really unpack those different layers of what is happening in those moments. Number 4, speaking shame is so important as its survival depends on going undetected. So oftentimes when we don't talk about those moments of discouragement, it can often become something that ends up building on a wrong foundation. So oftentimes when we are not talking about those discouragement, it can add up and to the point where it does affect our capacity or even our courage to move forward in those moments. If you could go on the next slide. So I just listed again those examples on this side, and then if you could go on the next tab, I just listed different questions that we could ask ourselves in those moments when, say, we are presenting a workshop and then we're forgetting our words. A good question to ask is, what are my triggers? Like, how is my body reacting when I'm feeling discouraged? Do I stop talking to people? Do I stop looking at people in the eye? Is my heart racing? What is my body doing? And not just what is my body doing, but also how am I feeling? And what are these feelings telling me? So oftentimes in those moments we have anxiety, and like David mentioned, that's when mindfulness is really, really key in helping us to reground ourselves and to find something or people around us. When we're talking about what brings joy to a workplace, being relationships and teamwork, that's when there's an opportunity for us to develop that in being vulnerable with one another. And oftentimes I know that not all of us have a large QI team, but I do believe that our network as practice facilitators is also another place that could be an avenue for those of us who may not have a large team to work with, just to reach out to someone who may have had a little more years in doing this work to help gain a better perspective on things. And also, another question that I listed here is there a place you can go temporarily to reground yourself? And the reason why I've listed this here is because I just remember my first workshop. I was having a lot of anxiety, and I started just doubting myself and my own capacity to present a lot of new information that was for me because I was still new. And I found that when I completely physically removed myself from my work, so I literally just went in my car outside and just listened to a little bit of music just to calm myself down. I found that it really created the ecosystem that I needed for me to remain grounded and to remember that this is just a moment in time and it's not everything, because I think that's oftentimes my anxiety makes me believe that this is the end-all, be-all, and oftentimes that's what prevents us from being grounded and from being clear-headed so that we could do our work well as practice facilitators. And so the last question I listed here is there a lesson that can be learned from this? And it's funny because we as practice facilitators, our role is to implement change, and oftentimes failures are failures are opportunities for us to improve, and so it also becomes an opportunity for all of us to do that work within ourselves so that we could overcome the barriers and move forward and grow as practice facilitators. If you could go on the next slide. So I found this graph which I really liked because it really frames a lot of the things that enables us to become resilient at work, and that's interacting cooperatively, maintaining perspective, having someone that could help us understand what is happening, but to also give us a little bit more of a bird's eye view of the situation, because oftentimes our anxiety or stressors can make us believe that everything is nearsighted, and so having others that are looking at the situation from the outside can help us and reground us so that we can find a way to move forward. And what I also like about this graph is also talking about finding your calling, because I think it's a great reminder for us as practice facilitators to understand our role, because oftentimes we equate the result of, say, a clinic not changing to us failing, but we have to remember also that our role is to be the change agent, but it's also to facilitate the change. And so we are just the ones that are there to support the change. And so for that change to happen, it often involves people and things that are outside of our control. So remembering that that is our role, and that if the best that you did was to present the information but the recipient of that information did not do anything with it, it's not a result of your own lack. If that makes any sense. And so, if you could go on the next slide. I just added a little bit of a quote from one of the poems I wrote a while ago. And it just talks about fear. And fear is the thin membrane crippling the backbone of courage, turning us into the faithful beggars of our comfort zone. And I wanted to bring that forward here just because oftentimes, all those moments of stress and frustration, sometimes it can be rooted out of fear. But we also have to remember and try to reframe those moments as opportunities to exercise courage, so that we can grow as practice facilitators, so that we could actually be able to become more efficient, because the only way for us to do that is to go through those moments. And so the last slide that I have here, just it's a quote from Brené Brown that I really enjoyed, so I just wanted to just read it. Manifesto of the Brave and Brokenhearted. There is no greater threat to the critics and cynics and fearmongers than those of us who are willing to fall, because we have learned how to rise with skinned knees and bruised hearts. We choose owning our stories of struggle over hiding, over hustling, over pretending. When we deny our stories, they define us. When we run from struggle, we are never free. So we turn toward truth, look it in the eye. We will not be the characters in our stories, not villains, not victims, not even heroes. We are the authors of our lives. We write our own daring endings. We craft love from heartbreak, compassion from shame, grace from disappointment, courage from failure. Showing up is our power. Story is our way home. Truth is our song, and we are brave and brokenhearted, and we are rising strong. And in the same way that we as practice facilitators develop resilience, it also creates a level of empathy when we are approaching our clinics and our physicians to know that we can connect with them in our own experience, and it's a great way for us to be more engaged in the work that we do, knowing that that all of this is a human experience, and so it enables us to move and operate in a more powerful way as we do our work. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Medjean. Are there any questions for her? If you would like to type them into the chat box, if there's specific questions. And while you do that, maybe we'll just kind of go on to the next slide just to talk about, so we have, what was your main takeaway? If you can go back to the poll everywhere, main takeaway from today's webinar, or to the text as well.
As we wait, there was a question in the chat that says, how do you translate this into helping clinics find joy? I would say oftentimes we can draw from those personal experiences and being transparent in sharing those moments with our clinic team to enable us to actually give them a bit more confidence to actually explore joy in the way that they work.
There's great comments here. Yeah, I don't know if you, I'm sure you can see them as well, Medjean, but there's some great takeaways from today. I really like it's come up a couple of times that we're in it together, we're not alone, and that you can't just expect joy to find you, that you need to search. Yeah, and a joint responsibility between the employee and the employer. So great information, great takeaways. So thank you to our speakers today. And you can, just a reminder that this will be up on the collaborative website, and so you will be able to listen to it again to refer back to some of the information that you may have missed the first time around. I find that sometimes one thing gets stuck in my brain, and then I miss kind of the next statement that comes after it because I'm so focused behind. So I encourage you to listen to it again. And just a reminder that all the resources are shared there. So previous webinars, today's webinar, and if you aren't already registered, be sure and get registered on the website. You go to the PCN PMO and ask to be a member of the collaborative, the Practice Facilitators Network Collaborative. And you just need to send that to the PFA or PF admin at PCN PMO, and then they'll send you out all the information on how to get connected. So the collaborative website, we have the webinars, the emails, and then we also have, you'll be sure that you have signed on so that you get notifications when there's discussions happening, and watch for those to come through. I know that you all have things to contribute to those discussions, and when people put their questions up there, they really appreciate the responses that they get to them. Yeah, so the webinars, the first Monday now, actually, the information for January 1, we did move the January 1. It will not be the first Monday. It will be on the 13th, I believe, the next Monday. Confirm that for me, Leanne?
That's correct, Carol.
Perfect. I see there's some other comments in the chat box there. One around one person that shared, Angel shared with us that that some of this can seem fluffy and that she rolled her eyes the first time she saw the idea of joy in work, but then went to the IHI live stream a few years ago and listened to one of the Joy in Work talks, and it was absolutely brilliant and changed her mind. And then Sandy also offered that they are offered the Happiness Basics, and it's a really good team building event. Okay, so we're just down to the last couple of minutes. This is our last slide, is that correct? Just joy to the practice facilitator world and happy holidays. And don't forget to find the joy in work as well as the joy in all the preparations for the holiday season ahead, however you may celebrate that. And we look forward to having you on the line again in January. Okay. I don't have anything else, so thank you very much for all those that were on the line today.